committee understands that norms don't matter. They don't restrain someone like Donald Trump or the people around him. And so they're looking to put in place new laws. What do you think of that?
I think it's actually absolutely critical. One of the things that we realized in the aftermath of the election, although I will say there were a number of people in the Democratic Party who were working on this before the election who realized that there was exactly this problem, some kind of vagaries in the law, lack of precedent that could lead to chaos on January 6th. Leave aside an insurrection, but if people in the Senate and the House were committed to trying to overturn the election, and it's absolutely critical that the law be clarified and be changed. And the only thing I would say that worried me in the story was that exactly this piece, because if you're going to roll out an interim report sometime, maybe in the late spring or in the summer, and then a final report around the time of the elections, that doesn't give you a lot of time to actually pass legislation if you assume, and it may not happen, but if you assume that control of Congress might change by January of 2023. So if there was one thing that worried me reading that article, it said they ought to speed up the reforms of those laws now. We know what some of the problems are. We know what the things that need to be fixed are. And let's front load this, and next year we can get the report out, do all the rest of it. But let's try to work on those changes while we know we have Democratic control of both the House and the Senate.
You know, Jonathan Lemire, something that I think is interesting is we don't know what we don't know in terms of what this committee has and how it will be perceived. And I look at Mitch McConnell's changing tone about the committee's work as, I'm from California, so it's always an earthquake reference, but maybe an earthquake you don't feel, but one that they see. What about the notion of hours and hours and days of hearings in Donald Trump Jr.'s voice over text sent to Mark Meadows or Kayleigh McEnany or other senior officials? What about Bill Stepien testifying about whether or not the campaign really did fraudulently raise money based on a lie about election fraud, knowing it wasn't true? What about Bernie Kerik, who I think served time in prison and was pardoned by Donald Trump, coming and telling this? I mean, these are all people not just aligned with Donald Trump. This is Trump world. These are his people. And not all of them are a Roger Stone or a Paul Manafort willing to thumb the criminal justices. I mean, what about the possibility that when they get to storytelling, it's a doozy for the ex-president?
Yeah, well, first of all, Nicole, that McConnell remark really raised a lot of eyebrows across Washington. Mitch McConnell is someone who usually doesn't even acknowledge the House exists. And the fact that he has made clear that he's paying attention there and thinks the work there is consequential seems to matter, and perhaps reflective of the progress being made by the committee and how many threads they still have to pull. As you just outlined, you mentioned a who's who of Trump world. All of them have vital information the committee would love to get. Obviously, it's waiting for the Supreme Court to make a decision about whether or not it'll have access to the records that currently at the National Archives. There's some thought that could be hopefully resolved by late winter, early spring. There's this phone call, a series of phone calls that Trump made from the White House to the war room, or really war rooms, at the Willard Hotel. There's a bunch of Trump advisors had holed up there. I guess rooms were readily available that night. And the committee is looking into them, according to new reporting from The Guardian and elsewhere. They know the power of a story, as Donna said. That's how, as you well know, Nicole, veteran of campaigns, that's how the best politicians make their case. They tell stories. And it seems like this committee has moved into a far more public phase with some of the rhetoric from the committee, both Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson, from their public statements. And they seem to be ready to tell this story, to really once again shock the American people, who will, of course, be newly focused on the events of January 6th as the one-year anniversary approaches in just a matter of weeks.
It's amazing. It's been a year. Everyone is sticking around, even before the tragic and deadly insurrection of January 6th. We all learned and heard Donald Trump's pressure call to, quote, find some votes in the state of Georgia. That call and his lies about his loss there are being quietly investigated as well. Where that stands, next.